Well, welcome. Thanks for joining the first session after lunch. Always fun. My name is Patrick Blais, je parle français. For questions in French afterwards, I'll gladly answer them in French. But the presentation is in English. I've been running around, talking about visibility, the value of different techniques of adding visibility to your environments, your security ecosystems, and things like that for a while now. Picked up a few certifications along the way. And I'm here today to talk about something called operationalizing the attack surface with DPI at scale visibility. Lots of big buzzwords there. So I thought we should do a level set. Actually, this is kind of like the whole presentation 101, where it's like, let's do a level set and let's scare you a little bit. And then let's maybe propose certain ways that we could take the scary part away. And then let's ask some questions to make you guys think about what's going on, right? And so that's basically my agenda. So one of the ways I thought it'd be a good effective way to do a level set was with an analogy. And that's why there's a pirate ship up there. So I guess I want you guys to imagine that you're like captains of a ship, right? And the ship represents your enterprise. And by the way, I was going a couple of ways on this. Thought maybe we could have done it with Star Trek, and the that could be like your spaceship, and it's actually called the Enterprise, which would have been nice. And we could have done Star Wars, whatever. But the idea here is just think of this as trying to explain all those words on the front of the slide, and I did what most of you probably do today to try to get me this kinds of ideas here of how to explain it this way. Is I just asked ChatGPT. That's all I did. So if you think about your ship in this case, your captain of this ship, you need to make sure that you're safe. And if you think of the whole ship, that pretty much represents your attack surface, where pirates, you guys get pirates, you don't get Romulans or Klingons, but that's where pirates can attack, right? And so how do you operationalize that in terms of adding more visibility? Well, one of the technologies that we're going to talk about today is called DPI. It stands for Deep Packet Inspection. It's been around for a long, long time. And Deep Packet Inspection would be like you have a team of experts on your ship, and everything that comes in or goes out gets inspected. And not just the outside of the package. You're going to go look, you're going to open it, you're going to look inside, you're going to see if that's a threat. And then you're going to make a decision, not just a decision, but you're going to try to alert people and notify people if you find something that might be a threat or malicious. So operationalizing that is to is the hard part is to cover the entire ship, right? Is to make sure that you have visibility every place a pirate could attack. And that's kind of what the hard part is. It's to do it at the scale that's necessary to be able to do it for your entire ship. So be safe from pirates. Add DPI at scale to your ship. That's the message I guess I'm here to talk about today. So let's go to the scary part. Like I said, the first part of the presentation is always to scare you. So it's a reality check. And I think we can all sort of relate to this in one form or another. I'm hearing a lot of people telling me, man, my network is not complex at all. I wish it was more complex. So we have these complex networks that are getting more and more complex. And you have a set of controls today in place. All of you, I'm sure, have sets of controls in place to protect yourselves from breaches, basically, right? And so what's going on, and you can find a lot of different stats on this. This one's from Mandiant, 2022. But the point is that if you do the math on this, 68% is a failing grade. 68% is getting through. 32% are the only ones that are getting caught in this study. And so we got to do better, right? We got to do better. And that's what we're going to discuss today, of one of the techniques, one of the technologies available that you could add to your security ecosystems that's going to help you bring that number down, right? And try to stay off the news and all those types of things. Now I put this in black and white because it's obvious, right? So the idea here is we're not going to spend too much time on this, but a lot of us would get bonuses if we could reverse these two things, right? Again, like there's just not enough people today, and the skill sets are hard to find, and the budgets are all getting cut, but everything else is still going up. And so we got to make sure that we understand that to try to start addressing or balancing this a little bit more is that we got to make sure that we're doing the right things. We're spending the money in the right spots. And so, I might be flying through this. Careful, it's only been 6 minutes. So one of the things that some of the leaders get paid for is to do this thing like risk assessments, right? Risk assessments. I'm gonna gather some data, and I'm gonna look at all my controls, and I'm gonna do all this interviewing, and I'm gonna go and come up with a strategy to win. Easy, right? It's not easy, and it's not actually straightforward. And part of the reason that assessing risk and understanding, where you should be spending money, what I call where you should be giving more love, why it's difficult, is because of all of the different layers that you need to understand when you think of this defense in depth, which is a common framework that I think everybody understands. But defense in depth basically means you got to do a bunch of stuff. Are you doing the right stuff? Well, you're probably doing the right stuff. Are you doing enough of the other stuff? And I was at lunch, and we're just chatting, making conversation and stuff. And a lot of times when you don't know what to say, I'm sure you guys have been there. It's kind of like a good thing to break the ice. You would say something like, "So, what have you seen lately on Netflix? What's good?" Right? I want to understand what I'm going to spend my time, where I'm going to make a commitment, watch this show here and there, and it could be Netflix, could be Amazon Prime, doesn't matter. And the person at the table today said, "Well, I'm watching this thing called Ring of Power, something like that. Ring of Power, I think." And I said, "Isn't that like a Lord of the Rings thing?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, I haven't seen Lord of the Rings." And they looked around and they said, "You might be the only one at this conference that hasn't seen Lord of the Rings." And he might have used the word nerd. And so I agree with him. I'm a geek or whatever. But he's probably right. So he said, let me do like a bet with you. If you can sneak in a Lord of the Rings like type of reference into your presentation, I'll buy you a beer. I like beer, so I'm going to take the bet. So here goes. I haven't seen Lord of the Rings. I've read it a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that one of the objectives within that story arc, or whatever, is to go on a quest and find a ring that's going to rule them all. And I think they find it at some point. Spoiler alert. I think they find it. As a security architect, security analyst, security operations center person, he's like, how is he going to fit this in? I think that a lot of times when we started our careers and stuff like that, especially back in the day, we were asked to go find that one magic bullet solution, that one solution that's going to rule them all. So I don't know if any of you are still looking, but it doesn't exist. So it doesn't end the same way as the Lord of the Rings. It doesn't exist. What you need to do is figure out, like I said before, where you're going to give some love, at which layer of your defense and depth strategies you're going to give some love. And one of the places that doesn't get that much love, and that's why we're talking about it today, is this place called packet forensics or deep packet inspection. And we'll talk about why that is, and hopefully motivate you to go look at packets as a very compelling source of data to add to your ecosystems. So to do that, the conversation we need to, I know I'm the only one talking, but the conversation we need to have is, why do packets matter? Like if we don't agree on that, then I guess like we can't move on and go into a deep packet inspection at scale kind of conversation. So let's start there. So one of the things about packets is that It's been the source or the data, the way we transmit data forever, and I don't see it stopping, right? So packets are on every network, even cloud. It's not magic. They're using packets too. And the thing with packets is that, one of the things with packets is that they're notoriously hard to collect and almost impossible to analyze. Very difficult to do it manually if you do it yourself. I don't know if you've ever tried, if you looked at a packet capture, not very fun. You kind of need to have somebody in your organization that we call packet head, like somebody that understands packets, look at it, the hex, there's like, you got to understand offset. There's not that many packet heads left around. In fact, they may all work at NetScout. So the idea of using technology is probably pretty important, right? Use technology to help you and get those analytics, because the packet is the most granular source of data out there for networks, and it's everywhere. So why not use it? So how do we use it? Well, we got to do it like if we go back to the analogy at the beginning with the captain of the ship trying to protect his entire ship. You have to be able to do it at scale, and that really is the hard part. So let's discuss that for a second. Oh, forgot I got animation here. Let me just get rid of the animation. Good. No spoilers. So there's 4 things you really want to do if you really want the technology to help you with when you're thinking about DPI at scale. So first and foremost, you want it to be full packets, no samples. Why? If you have a sample, then you have blind spots. You can have that package we were talking at the beginning sneak onto your ship. Could be something malicious. Could be I don't want to say the word bomb, but it could be something that would be bad for your ship, right? So the idea is you have to be able to take all packets at all times. Now, one of the reasons packets are difficult to collect and analyze is because they're very volumetric. There's a lot of them, and it becomes kind of cumbersome to store and things like that. So what you want your technology to do, secondly, is create optimized metadata from those packets, something you could use. So you could actually eventually, when I say eventually, like it could be hours, it could be a couple of days, you could discard the raw packets if you have the proper metadata. But you need metadata to be done on those packets. I know a lot of people think, wow, my data lake, I can put so much stuff. Yes, you can, but it's just going to sit there if you don't have the analytics anyways. So another good thing to look for is an architecture that is decentralized or distributed. When you don't have that, you have a choke point. And we just talked about how much volume there is when you talk about packets. So if you're introducing a choke point into your architecture with some sort of middleware or something like that, it won't scale. And so distributed just means go do your analytics as close as you can to the source. Like where you capture that packet, where you're making a copy of that packet from either a span or a tap or something like that, make sure you try to do your analytics right there. And leave it there. Unless somebody asks for it, but they should ask for it with some sort of filtered sort of demand. But the idea is leave it there. Don't move it all around and cause all sorts of headaches. So that's what a decentralized architecture looks like. The other thing is it can't take forever to get insight. So if you're trying to protect your ship, like we said at the beginning, like you don't want it to necessarily be okay. Let me get back to you in a couple of days or months or whatever. I got to analyze all this stuff. So you want it to be immediate. You want it to be real time or near real time, so that you can create policies immediately or take some sort of action. So that's the 4 things around DPI at scale. And we're just going to talk about the network for a second. So this is a standardized network diagram. Hope you all understand networks by now, so I don't have to explain that. I'm not going to go through the diagram. Networks have one job. That's why I made it so big. Networks really just have one job. It's like I tell my son's 18 years old and he sneaks in at 3 a.m. or whatever, and he doesn't like shut the door. I'm like, you have one job. Like I don't care about the 3 a.m., but shut the door. So the networks have one job, and it's basically to connect the users to the applications and services. That's basically it. And why? Because we want the users to be productive. We want them to do something, right? So it's pretty important. So adding visibility to that network through collecting the packets should be pretty important. So what are the benefits of filling that gap by doing DPI at scale? Well, you can basically start looking at the risk sort of proactively as opposed to reactively. You can start understanding your attack surface. Funny, that's the part of the title of this presentation, but and operationalizing it. You can do your investigations. You can find forensics pretty easily. Packets, the play of words we did on the title, Convenient Truth, we call packets, where I work, like the source of truth. And it's because, or packets don't lie, or we've said a bunch of this stuff. It's because other types of data sources like logs or machine data, even agents, things like that, like they can be manipulated, deleted, things like that. If we see packets go by, we analyze them right away, you know it's happened. And it means that it's one of the best things to use in a forensic investigation in security. And then you could also use it, again, to be a bit more proactive around the detection side. So you have a whole bunch of stuff in that layered defense in depth security model. Well, one of the things that you can do, I'll say, to augment your defense in depth and give some love. So you've given a bunch of love, let's say, to prevention technologies like firewalls and things like that. Well, on the detection side, one of the reasons why it's important to not just cross your fingers and hope that you fix or you find everything on prevention, because we know like almost 70% of it's getting through anyway. But it can only go to a certain point, and then you're going to have to look at the detection portion of it as well. Like it doesn't just keep you can't just keep doing prevention and no detection. It doesn't get you to the proper place. So threat hunting is one of the things that I'll say nobody really likes to do. It comes with a lot of anxiety and a lot of responsibility to the people that end up having to do it. And if they do it in a reactive fashion, it makes you sweat kind of even more, right? So if you add DPI at scale and you actually do sort of start operationalizing your attack surface, when you begin with a risk as opposed to just another alert, right? And what I want to say about alerts, this concept of alert fatigue, I mean, it's real, right? Like there's knocks and socks all over the place where you have all these alerts coming in. And what happens is it becomes noise to a point where they just stop being effective. People stop looking at these alerts. It's like it's like somebody standing outside. So you live in an apartment building, and somebody stands out of the apartment building, and basically everybody that's about to come into the apartment building, the person's got like, I don't know, let's call it a walkie-talkie. It's like, this could be an intruder. This could be an intruder. This could be, and everybody that's walking in, it could be an intruder. So at one point you turn it off. You turn the radio off. Because and then it's like, well, now you find, and somebody comes and they steal something, and you're like, well, I told you that could have been an intruder. I said, yeah, but you also told me that a million times. And so one of the things that we have to get better at is, if you're going to start your workflow in threat hunting and alerting, you better have good alerts. They better come from a good data source. Packets is a very good data source to do that. One of the reasons is because it has enough granular information in the packet to indicate severity. And you could start ignoring the things that aren't severe. So this is one of the things that helps within, even just if you were to do sort of that top line that takes months, just improving your alerting by adding something like DPI at scale to your security ecosystem, you could reduce the amount of alerts. So you begin with a risk, then you hunt, then you look for the evidence, and the evidence becomes, part of your process becomes that you can go and collect that evidence very, very quickly. And then basically the whole idea here is when you talk to security specialists and stuff like that, and you ask them about technologies they invest in, and you keep asking questions. I have this this shirt that I've been wearing around, just says, what do you do next? And so that's what I like asking people. And then what do you do? And then what do you do? And so what happens is that the tools that are the most used are the ones that are actually in the end going to save you some time. So if you can do something that's like put in a solution that's going to take you from months to hours, then there's a big appetite for that kind of thing within within the security ecosystems. Now, some more animation, sorry. Okay. So one of the other, so we talked about there's, this mechanism for helping with threat hunting. Another thing that DPI at scale is really good at is for detection, and then we'll talk about investigation in just a second. But detection, I think what I wanted to talk about, spend my time here to talk about is what I've been hearing the most lately is concerns around the unknown, right? So it's like, okay, IOCs are great, indicators of compromise are great, but they're going to impact most of the time known threats, right? They can only be an indicator of compromise if I know about it, for example. So I'm worried about the unknown stuff. And this is another beauty of being able to add things like DPI at scale to your ecosystems is that it has a lot of solutions will only have, or a lot of sort of underlying technologies will only be able to provide one or two of certain detection mechanisms. But with packets, you could actually go all the way up from known to unknown, even behavior anomalies. I'll give an example of behavior anomalies. So we're seeing a host pop up, let's just say with DPI at scale, you can see that there's like the host hasn't been there before. Like maybe it might be a contractor that just came in and they don't have an agent. You guys are maybe using agents on your endpoints. And we haven't seen that there before. So it's going to be an unknown host and an unknown behavior because the behavior is going to be, from the packets, you'll be able to see that's going from a source to a certain target, and we've never seen that before. Those are the types of things that a lot of security ecosystems worry about a lot, like unknown stuff that I can't control. And with packets, not only can we understand sort of lateral movement, so which host was, for example, patient 0 in a breach, and then which other host did it infect, for example, in terms of lateral movement, but we can also do like a lot of, I'll say, all the devices that aren't typically visible through other detection mechanisms. So think about that when you're thinking about the controls and the defense in depth strategy is like, is the thing I put in going to help me with known stuff or unknown stuff? And the closer you get to finding all your unknowns, I think the more secure you're going to feel anyway. And I said we're going to talk about investigations real quick. So, the prevention mechanisms are going to help, like I said, in terms of giving you very good protection. And again, I'm not saying you don't need these things. You need them all. You need next generation firewalls. You totally need them. But what I'm saying is what happens if something does get through? And once they're through, like, how do we investigate that? So where did my attack start? Where did it go? How long did it last? What is it? These are all perfect use cases for DPI at scale, right? So if you're taking packs, analyzing, creating metadata, all those things we talked about for DPI at scale, it's going to give you all these answers. Most of these answers, I shouldn't say all. Most of these answers should be part of what you can put within your investigations. You can actually even go to a point where you get the proof, because you can go get the packets, for example, and include them in your, let's say, report to a vendor or something like that. So understanding that investigations is a large part of the benefit. So we talked about this a little bit, but this is sort of that concept of garbage in, garbage out. So the value of the data that you're putting into your other systems is important. And what I mean by other systems is you don't necessarily, and we'll talk about this in just a second, but you don't necessarily need to have a dashboard for everything, right? And so if you have a system that you're already using that you want to integrate into, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but that's fine. And I think this is one of those situations where one thing where you're trying to accomplish, let's say, tool consolidation, but if you look at the amount of dashboards you're using and the amount of overlapping data sources that are feeding those dashboards, that might be a way to get you to tool consolidation. The Challenge is making sure that you select the data sources that are going to bring you the most value, right? And so if you're putting garbage into your system, you're going to get garbage out. And so that's the idea of this graph here. So let's talk about this dash. I came up with this. I don't know if I think I came up with it, but I was at AWS reInvent, and there's a lot of people that come visit the booth and stuff like that, and they said, please tell me you're not selling another dashboard. And I had to come up with a way of saying, no, I'm not. No, that's not what I'm doing. And so, but I thought about it, and it's true. So the idea, it's a good thing that it's true. So the idea is that there are many, many dashboards out there. And I think that the issue with today's sort of legacy type architectures, let's call it that, is that you have solutions that will have a 1-to-1 ratio, with their alerting mechanisms. I should have went all the way through this. And then what happens ultimately is that it actually equals into you having to hire more people. We talked about that bit at the beginning, how I'm not hearing somebody go, oh, I got so many people. It's not about that. They're reducing the amount of people because of budgets and other reasons. If you just go and add another dashboard to your ecosystem, you may not have the resources to look at the dashboard. If you add a thing, can you look at the thing? It shouldn't be a 1-to-1 ratio. And so what you want to look for is a technology that is going to help you reduce that ratio to something manageable. So let's say that you have an ITSM maybe and a SIEM. And those are technologies you're already using. Maybe some of the solutions that you're trying to feed into those things need to integrate. So the idea of integration could be through a partnership, but it could also be through standardized communication methods like Kafka, syslog, REST API, things like that. So the idea is be able to send your alerts and notifications to the dashboards you're already using. That is going to help quite a bit. But the kicker, I knew about that animation. So the kicker is to be able to drill down from that dashboard to go do what's called RCA, or root cause analysis. Because having an alert or notification and not understanding what to do with it from, let's say, a ServiceNow or a Splunk or one of the popular ones is not as effective or valuable than if you can actually go and complete the journey to go fix the problem. Right? So we have this, there's this sort of trend going on in LinkedIn and stuff where you have you have people putting their, I don't know if anyone does it here, but you put your title, and then I'm seeing a lot of problem solver. It sounds hard. It is hard. Solving problems is hard. But I guess I'll submit to you that what's actually harder is finding problems, right? So problem finding. Once you find it, solving it becomes relatively straightforward. I'm not going to say easy, but I'm going to say finding it most of the time is harder. And so if you're finding those problems on your dashboard, then solving them becomes the drill down. And you can get to those point solutions of choice in a, let's say, convenient workflow where it looks like one solution that's helping you. Oh, managed to use. Okay, so I think there's only 2 left. So here I just want to do a bit of a summary and do a visual, a bit of a different way. But if you have network and if you're concerned about security, you're normally concerned about security, north-south, and then you tackle it maybe even in another project, east-west. So north-south means, coming into my data center, coming into my clouds, coming into my software-defined data centers like VMware and stuff like that. That's north-south. Maybe going from, the top of a fabric to like an ACI fabric to the bottom, whatever. The point is there's north-south. I will say that one's relatively straightforward and a lot of times covered by different types of technologies. I think a little bit harder is east-west, specifically in some of the virtual environments today that you see. But those virtual environments, VMware, AWS, Azure, all of them use packets. And all of them have a way of mirroring or copying packets to solutions or inspection technologies. So you can do east-west, as long as you're doing it like also, not as long, it's more beneficial if you do it at scale, right? So if you do it so that you reduce the amount of blind spots and protect the entire environment. So deriving metadata is the best way to do that with a data source like packets or DPI at scale. And then we just talked about the power of those analytics and the idea of like an end-to-end comprehensive visibility is important. So being able to stitch the user at the top of that network diagram to the service and understanding everything in between and all the dependencies. And you can do all that with packets. So this is the part of the presentation where I just start asking questions. By the way, normally we ask questions and we want everybody to say yes, because we like it when people say, yeah, like, oh, have you seen this before? Yeah, yeah. This one? You guys can all say no, no. This is fine. So are you seeing everything you want to see? Probably not, right? No. Visibility is problematic in general, right? Visibility, and you know, there's a lot of taglines out there. One of them is like, you can't fight what you can't see. It's true. Like if you don't know that it's there, it's part of that unknown problem that I was mentioning before. It's what keeps a lot of people up at night. So is your data telling you everything you actually needed to know? There's probably some room for some no's in there too, right? So acting on the things that matter goes back to that sort of story I was telling about the guys in front of the apartment building, right? So alert fatigue, dashboard fatigue, all these things play into it. So reducing the noise is super important. One of the things that I'll say packets and deep packet at scale in general is really good at is separating the signal from the noise. And so if you can separate the signal from the noise, you can start acting on the things that matter quicker, keep your workforce sort of sane, hopefully, and getting rid of, well, reducing the amount of alert fatigue that you're needing. You can never really get rid of it. Are you getting ahead of the threats? This is that idea of going from reactive to proactive. That's everybody's sort of mission, obviously. But I would say that the state of security today and most of the enterprises I've seen, we're never going to get there. So the idea is that take it at a phased approach and small goals at a time and don't make it too overwhelming. But the idea of getting ahead of the threats is definitely sort of at the top of the list in terms of adding detection, more detection to your ecosystems. I think that's it. That is it. And I'm supposed to say, if you have a question, I hope you do. There is a mic, and somebody's going to run it to you. Are there any? Somebody's got to have a question. Even about pirates, Netflix. Okay, what's going on? Just a sec. I'm supposed to tell you to wait. Okay, there, did my job.
Hi. So I have a big cloud network that we manage. It's about 1,300 servers. And I come from a networking background, so I know how much deep packet inspection is important. So I guess when we tried this at the beginning, we went, the basic TCP dump, and then you go for traffic mirroring.
Yeah.
And now I moved to NDR, and I'm still not seeing what I think I should be seeing.
Yeah, one of these questions, or the questions from before. Yeah, gotcha. But can I ask which cloud? Is
AWS.
it multi? AWS, okay, AWS. So AWS is I know a lot about AWS because we're partners with AWS and we do some work with them, and they've invented a bunch of, I don't want to call them services, but I'll call them maybe software constructs within their environment to enable packet acquisition. There's 4, let's talk about 3. And I think you mentioned one of them. So VPC traffic mirroring is one of them. Yep. VPC traffic mirroring, for everyone who is familiar with AWS, just allows you to mirror what's called an ENI, or it stands for Elastic Network Interface, on any workload that has an ENI, right? So it's not something you need to add or pay for. You just have to enable it. And what it does is it defines the ENI as a source, and then you define a target, which will be a tool of some sort that's going to basically consume packets. And it's going to be everything that workload is seeing, you're going to get a copy of it. So that's one way to do it. It sounds like you've tried that.
Yep.
There's another way that they added, there's 2 other ways, but I'll talk about 2. So there's ingress routing. So ingress routing is about, I don't know if you've done that, but that's on an internet gateway. So on your internet gateway, when all the traffic's coming into your AWS cloud, by the way, there's very similar things in Azure and Google as well. But the ingress routing just says, instead of going where you want to go here first. And it's transparent to the user, and you're basically telling it to go to usually an inspection VPC, so a part of your cloud architecture that's going to look for, you can put firewalls there, but you can also put DPI at scale type technology. Another way they do it is called Gateway Load Balancer, so GWLB for short. So Gateway Load Balancer is just a good way to do it if you're creating a choke point to do east-west between VPCs. So you can think of like traffic mirroring as edge VPC almost, like just doing it within your VPC, and then you can think of Gateway Load Balancer as a centralized way of doing inspection in general, not just DPI at scale. So maybe what I would suggest to you is to have a look at Gateway Load Balancer. So go ahead.
Okay, unfortunately right now they put like 1,300 instances in a single VPC.
It'll still work. So
Yeah.
what happens is what you can do is create a workload that has enough, let's call it horsepower, vCPUs, memory, whatever, and have the way the Gateway Load Balancer works is that you have what's called a Gateway Load Balancer endpoint, that you put in whatever VPC you want, usually close to the workload that you want to inspect. Okay, so you would have, it sounds like a Gateway Load Balancer endpoint in VPC A, and what happens is you can basically route. It's not the right word, but you can send all of your traffic there either on north, south, or east, west, doesn't matter, to this Gateway Load Balancer endpoint. That's basically the only place where that can go. It's like a black hole or a tunnel, and it goes to the Gateway Load Balancer, and then the Gateway Load Balancer, then you inspect whatever you want. It uses what's called a Geneve protocol, so it's transparent to everything, and so it helps you a lot with inspection. It sounds like the challenge you're having is less about it sounds like you're fighting your cloud architects because you have to deal with an architecture that's already in place. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. So I don't know why they put everything in the same VPC. That sounds odd to me.
It was bad planning from lift and shift after moving from a data center.
So part of that issue is just that. Maybe it's like a step back almost to see if there's a better way to architect it in general. If there isn't, then at the moment, yeah, I would suggest VPC traffic mirroring and Gateway Load Balancer maybe to look at there.
But as touching on actually the scanning of the data, like so you had the thing with the metadata attached. So when previous positions you Splunk to pull it apart and you can drift through the metadata. But in terms of cost, running Splunk and pulling 1,300 instances.
Splunk is seen as I'll say a necessary, like security incident event manager for those who don't, like SIEMs are necessary, but they also depend on, it's like this garbage in, garbage out thing. They depend on the data you're feeding it, right? Done a lot of work with Splunk. So I would just say there is like the different types of data sources that you're feeding into Splunk might be worthwhile to evaluate. I'm trying to be as agnostic as possible. I think you should actually come to our booth and I could continue this conversation with you because I have some ideas, but the idea of I have to be a little bit technology agnostic here. So the idea of just picking the proper technologies that are creating the right type of metadata that are feeding Splunk so that it's not expensive. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, that's kind of where you think you should go there. Anything else on this? Since you have the mic, do you have any other questions?
No, all good. Good.
Anybody else? We should plant questions. Do you have a question, Domenico? Domenico works with me.
Invite them to our booth. Anybody that
Yeah. Do you know the number of our? Anyway, we're in the Netscope booth. We're in the expo center there. Any questions en français? No. Okay. Well, we won't keep you for. We'll let you go. I will give you back 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and I appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the question. Singular. Thanks, guys.